Hey there, fellow creators, Ben here from Cinderblock Studios. And this week I was thinking that, wait a minute, what year is it in this? And I'm like, holy crap, I have now officially been painting for over 20 years, which seems crazy. I started when I was 10 years old. That's a long time to be painting, especially for someone as young as me. But then I was looking around the studio, I was like, you know what, I've had a lot of the things that I've had in my studio for about that period of time. So for today, here's 5 materials that I've had in my studio for at least and almost 20 years. Stick around. So when I say that these things have existed in my studio for 20 years or around that time, we kind of have to use that with an asterisk a little bit. Some of them are give and take in terms of years, and well, all of them have predated me having a studio space. I had a table in the corner of the room for a long period of time. And even that I had to fight for when I was younger, so I was like, eventually it's like stuff just got piled in the corner, and that eventually became a table, and after college it eventually became a studio. But what are those things? What are those things that I've had for a long time? So long, in fact, that I was like, man, I gotta use some of this stuff because I've had it this long, and either use it or get rid of it or donate it at the very least. But the first one of these things is some black sketch paper. I have actually quite a lot of black sketch paper. In fact, I recently actually picked up a Canson XL black sketch paper. Why? Definitely not because this wasn't enough, but I was like, is the quality any different? Because this stuff, if there's any fellow millennials with me or people who had kids in the 90s, and early 2000s, you might remember gel pens, Milky pens specifically. This is official Milky Gear sketch pad. It's just basic black sketch paper, but that's where all my black sketch paper originated. And I have 3 pads of this stuff. I don't know why I have 3 pads of this stuff. It was just me and my brother growing up, so there were only 2 of us, and I have 3 pads. I don't know where the 3rd one came from. But yeah, black sketch paper, I've had it forever. And every time I pull it out, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got this stuff. I should use this. This is interesting and different. And I think I've used it in a video once. The next one is, when I think about it, it's even, for me, it's kind of surprising. And it's old Crayola watercolor packs. Now, technically, these actually well predate the 20-year mark because these 2 packs were in my house when my family moved in 1996. So I was 5.5 years old back then. These were just shuffled around with all the junk that the previous owners left in the basement. So these particular watercolor pans predate, I'm pretty sure predate the 90s. What's interesting about the old Crayola ones is the new ones aren't as good as these ones are. I don't know what they did differently, starting probably in the late 80s to early 90s. They changed something about the paints, but the ones you get in the store today aren't quite these. I mean, they still look the same. They still come in a plastic thing that looks fairly similar to one of these, but they're not, the quality just shifted a little bit. So I have them, and I, for a long time, used them more than my other tube watercolors, because at that point I had like 1 or 2 tube watercolors. But when I started kind of using watercolors more professionally, I was still using these, and I still have them because they're, believe it or not, really pretty decent watercolors. Next up, we've got kind of a 2-for-1 deal, and it's charcoal and oil pastels. Now, I've got a ton of charcoal in general. I hardly ever use it. I'm like, oh, let me get compressed charcoal. Let me get charcoal pencils, and I use them once, and I don't touch them again. Sometime in late high school, I picked up this little pack of the Utrecht stuff, which would now be the Blick stuff in the box. Standard, medium, Willow Charcoal. But when I bought this, I was like, I think I wanted more of it because all I had was this. Now, this is a tiny little thing of General's Willow Charcoal. Now, General still makes Willow Charcoal, but I'm pretty sure they don't sell them in this little tube anymore. And this little pack of charcoal, I've had since, oh, hello. I was probably about 12, so that would be 2002. I think. I'm not sure. Everything blurs together from back then, so I yeah, that's just a rough estimate, because I know sometime after I started painting, I started slowly accumulating art supplies, things I was asking for, and things that were just flat out given to me by relatives. So I think this was a birthday gift sometime around then. But yeah, I've had this that long. Just proves how often I use charcoal, because I got this one, I made some at some point, I got this, I got sticks, I got pencils, but I still don't really use charcoal. And the other one is oil pastels, specifically the Pentel ones, but not this pack, this pack. Again, this is one of those ones that predates the 20-year mark, because these, I think, were in my mom's college set. Actually, a few things in my studio that were in my mom's college set that I eventually swiped, because, hey, free materials, more or less. What's interesting I found about these, compared to other oil pastels, is these are like the cheap student-y grade ones, but at some point the outside of these had basically completely hardened, and I was like, crap, they're basically ruined. As soon as I tried oil pastels in high school again, I was like, wow, these are what these are supposed to be like? But I found I just took a knife and just shaved down that edge on them. And then sometime in high school, I also got this pack, which is a new version of one of these. But even these I've barely touched at all. I think it's the white. I used about a quarter of the white one. That's about it. I pulled it, like the oil pastels as well as the charcoal out for some mixed media projects here and there, but pretty much generally don't really touch them all that much. So the next one, I can't remember if I was like 8 or 9 or like 11 or 12 when I got this, but it's a wood burner.
I remember being 9, my parents bought me a wood burning kit, you know?
Which seems to be kind of an irresponsible thing to give to a little kid. I mean, they always say, like, use parental supervision, and at some point, I think in high school, my dad stole this from my art supplies and was using it as a soldering iron for a while, because honestly, that's all this is. There's no dial, there's no switch on and off. You plug it in and it gets ridiculously hot, and then you can burn things with it. You're supposed to do it with wood or leather, but you know, you're a kid, you've got a hot instrument. At a certain point, that becomes dangerous. Now, I only know that my dad was using it as a soldering iron because sometime, I think in late college or after I graduated, I found this in my dad's tool set, and I was like, hey, this is mine! So I took it back, and recently, I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, that's it. You know what? I moved with that. Where was that? It's in this house somewhere. I just don't know where. And then I found it. And now we've got this video. And the last tool that I've had for 20 years are some of my brushes. My regular acrylic brush set. The two in particular that I think of, and I actually have pulled these out for videos before, are two of the brushes that came with my acrylic starter set. There's a fan brush, which I still utilize. I would say every 3 to 4 paintings that I do, even today, I will utilize this brush. And then there's this other brush that's kind of like a round brush that looks like somebody's just sawed the top off at an angle. And this brush I think I've used 3 times in the past 20 years. So it's actually still in pretty decent shape. But I've got a lot of brushes in here that are like that. Some of them I don't know where I got them or when I got them. Here's a knife from my mom's art supplies. This is one from high school. So this one's 12 years old? Or 18? Wait a minute. I don't know, my brain's not doing math right now. 2008, however long ago that was. I don't know. I'm not going to try and figure it out right now. But this brush is that old. Several of these are. Actually, this one is. That one's that old. I've used that one a lot more often. Really splayed out. But yeah, some of these brushes I've had for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And you know, if you keep your brushes in good shape, roughly, you can keep on using them. So yeah, some brushes, like at least every brush in here, or every 5 brushes in here, go back every 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I've got brushes that are that old. So that's just a little trip down memory lane, at least on my part. But I know some of you guys have been watching and have been painting longer than I've probably even been alive. So whether you've been painting a short amount of time or a long amount of time, what are some of the tools that you've had since the very beginning? If you can remember them or know off the top of your head what they are, share with them with me in the comments below. Actually, I'm really curious about this because it seems like everybody has certain things that they use a lot and certain things that they use just a little bit, but will still kind of accumulate. Like, well, I might need that eventually, so I'm going to hold on to it. That's what a lot of those supplies are for me. But again, it varies. Some things I use, some things I don't. But from start to finish, it's like, hey, I've been doing this a while, and I've accumulated stuff, and it didn't start with all the stuff. It started with a couple of brushes, some oil pastels, and a whole slew of sketch paper. So if you enjoyed this video and learned anything in the midst of it, go ahead and hit that like button. Helps the video out, as always. Check my social links in the description box below, as well as ways to support me and find my art online. Keep on creating. This has been from Cinderblock Studios, and I will see you guys next time. Actually, the grand scheme of this video was finding the wood burner after watching that Jeff Foxworthy clip. And I was like, I've got one of those.